Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, all eyes on the much-awaited CNN Philippines presidential debate featuring 9 of 10 presidential candidates, while 7 out of 9 vice presidential candidates faced off in the CNN Philippines vice presidential debate. With the conclusion of the back-to-back political showdowns, analysts and netizens are calling out the candidates who chose to skip the debates. Political analysts Franco and Coronacion join us live. Candidates vying for the country's top post trooped to the University of Santo Tomas on Sunday to let the public know why they should be the 17th president of the Philippines. One of the questions we asked, what were the candidates doing when the pandemic started, and what did they think of the government's response to the crisis? Here's what they said.
Nalulungkot ako dahil ang unang-unang ginawa ng Pangulong Duterte ay parang binaliwala yung COVID. Ay saka nagkukumahog. Ang problema ay sa halip na mga taong may alam sa medical at sa virus, ay mas ang minobilize ay yung militar na ang ginawa, puro lockdown.
Natatandaan ko, tinatanong namin yung mga health officials dahil merong Wuhan couple nagbiyahe galing Cebu, papunta Dumaguete, bumalik na Manila. Tinanong namin, kailan may contact tracing? Ilan na yung na-contact tracing nyo sa mga co-passengers? Ang sagot sa amin, 17%. Agad-agad na isip ko, malaki ang problema natin. Pagkatapos noon, yung mga Chinese tourists, pinayagan pa rin, hindi binawalan na makapasok dahil kaibigan daw natin ng China. Again, sinabi ko, malaki problema natin.
Hindi po tayo nagtago. Una po tayong lumabas at namigay ng face mask, face shield, at saka PPS. Mabot po ng more or less kulang po 2 bilyon ang na-donate natin sa gobyerno para po makatulong tayo nung lumabas itong lockdown. Yan po ay patunay na isang tunay na leader na handang ibuhis ang buhay para sa kapakanan ng taong bayan.
Nung March 16, 17, nung nawalan na ng public transportation, nag-launch po tayo ng shuttle buses. Naglagay po tayo ng mga dormitories. Wala na pong trabaho yung mga toda natin. Naglagay po tayo ng community marts. Nag-launch po tayo ng Bayanihan Eskwela nung wala ng paaralan. Mayroon tayong mga community learning hubs. Nag-launch po tayo ng Bayanihan Hanap Buhay para dun sa mga nawalan ng trabaho. Meron po tayong Vaccine Express. Meron tayong Swab Cab. Meron po tayong Bayanihan E-Consulta.
And let's go straight to the sources of the story. We are going to speak to political analyst Franco and Coronacion. Professors, welcome to The Source. Maraming salamat po sa inyong oras and thank you for watching the presidential debate. I'm gonna already ask, Professor Jean, let me start with you. Let's talk about that pandemic response. Yung tanong kasi namin doon, what were you doing during the days, weeks, and months since nag-ECQ po tayo dito sa Luzon? And of course, they added ano yung kanilang mga ginawa. Sino po stood out sa inyo dito sa mga kandidato?
Well, I think, of course, because she is an incumbent, I think it's Lenny, you know. But I also like the fact that Calyodi also sort of took the present administration to task, no? Because that's something that has to be said, no, in that kind of debate.
Opo, ang sinabi niya kasi hindi ho ba tila binaliwala at pinasok yung mga miyembro, well, yung mga military men, to which some people have always raised that question. Bakit hindi medical professionals, experts doon sa field instead of military men? Professor Dennis, what about you? Sino po sa kanila stood out?
Well, actually, we have to take into account, the position that they were occupying at the time that the lockdown started, and mas may clear advantage yung mga incumbent officials, the likes of Senator Lacson, Senator Pacquiao, and Vice President Robredo. So among these incumbent officials, I think based on what they mentioned on the number of projects that they did, parang pinakamaraming nabanggit si Vice President Robredo. I don't know if it's the lack of time or what, pero marami yung nabanggit ng mga ginawa ni Vice President Leni Robredo. On the other hand, among the private individuals,
Professor Dennis, sorry to interrupt you, but we are talking about incumbent officials, hindi ho ba? Another incumbent official is Mayor Isko Moreno. Dagdag lang po natin yon. What did you think of his response to the COVID-19 pandemic?
well, it was equally impressive since he said that he was invited to the United Kingdom to be oriented as to what to do. And sabi niya, pag uwi niya sa Maynila, yung mga natutunan niya doon sa inattenda niyang training ay isinagawa niya agad sa kanyang syudad. Kaya naman daw naging prepared sila. So I suppose he was telling the truth.
And then you were saying, before I asked you that question, dun sa mga lesser known candidates naman po, yung ano po yung tumatak sa inyo sa kanilang mga sagot sa pandemic?
Well, yun na nga dahil they were not in the position at the time that the lockdown took place. Ang titingnan natin is ang isipin natin is in their own little ways ano ba ang nagawa nila. And yung pinapaliwanag ni former Defense Chief Norberto Gonzales was also worthy of noting. Sabi niya, nandun daw yata siya sa isang lugar, I think it was Bataan, and in his own little way, may mga tinulungan siya doon, sa community doon. So, that was somehow, kumbaga man impressive na rin yun kasi bilang isang private individual, makikita mo na may ginawa siya.
Let me throw that same question to Professor Jean doon sa mga hindi incumbent. Meron ho ba sa kanilang na-highlight para sa inyo yung sagot nila with regards to the pandemic?
Yeah, I think Dr. Montemayor's response was also very heartfelt because he said he and his colleagues really risked their lives in combating COVID, especially at its earlier stage when there was no vaccine yet and a lot of health workers have caught COVID or some have even died.
I think he mentioned also isang kaibigan niya. Ang isa sa mga unang died because of COVID. And then we went to the economic team. We wanted to ask the candidates, sinong plano nilang italaga sa kanilang economic team? Of course, the pandemic, we suffered, the economy has suffered a lot due to the pandemic. But no one really mentioned a particular person who will be part of their economic team. Was that disappointing for any one of you? Professor Jean, let me start with you.
Yeah, I think it was very disappointing because, the idea of being a candidate is that you are ready to assume office once you win. And but I think the hesitance in naming a specific person has to do with the fact that maybe they have not talked to that particular person and they did not want to publicize it even before that they have talked to that person. And the other thing is that they have not really thought about it. But I guess the mere fact that candidates are already, mulling over the qualifications is also a good indication that they want to have people who will be consistent with their campaign message and advocacies.
Professor Dennis?
Yes, it was somewhat disappointing that they did not mention any name in their economic team. This would have been very important, especially on the part of the voters, considering we would like to know the background or the qualification of the people, the individuals that they would like to appoint. Sana. And some at this early stage, ma-assess natin if they're indeed qualified or if they can steer the country out of this economic crisis that we are experiencing. Kasi kung tama yung sinabi ni Professor Jean na kung wala ka pang the impression that that was created by not mentioning names, it was that baka hindi ka pa ready. Baka hindi mo pa tanggap na ikaw yung mananalo. Kung sakali ikaw mananalo, how much time would you need in order to to create a team that would take care of that would address our economic problems?
Yeah.
And time is of
But-
the essence. Time is of the essence.
Opo. But do you think they really have no one in mind yet? Or is it more so really just not wanting to reveal? Do you frankly think that wala pa silang naiisip to be even a part of their economic team?
Well, they probably had the names in mind, kaya nga lang, siguro nga they wouldn't want to reveal it. Siguro they didn't want to run the risk of pag nabanggit yung pangalan ng mga certain individuals, baka mamaya mapahiya sila kasi sasabihin hindi naman wala akong plano sumali sa kahit kaninong administrasyon. So fear of rejection perhaps.
What did you say?
Yeah.
Possibly fear of rejection? Professor, I thought nag-freeze ho ba si Professor Dennis? Sorry. Okay. Professor Jean, go ahead. You wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
But I thought, Pinky, that question on the economic team was one of the best questions during the debate. And I think this is something that should be asked, no? During debates, not only the economic team, the foreign policy team, the local government, the DILG, because the AFP chief of staff, because these are things that would further make the public understand how serious the candidates are in their advocacy, because the kind of people that they will appoint to key positions in the government will define their administration.
We need to talk about economy further with regards to the wages of the workers. We asked that question to two candidates. We'll be talking about that after the break. The hashtag CNN Philippines presidential debate is still trending on Twitter. We'll talk about more of the debates, highlights. We need to take a very short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Pinky Webb. Our guests today, political analysts Jean, Franco, and Dennis Coronacion. But during the vice presidential debate, hindi ho ba, Professor Dennis, it was former Congressman Walden Bello who actually said, kung bibigyan siya, ano ang napupusuan niyang government post? Siya nagsabi, Secretary of Finance, hindi ho ba?
Yes, that's right. And it's because of I think the economic reforms that they would like to undertake in case they would win. Both of them would win. I think they were itong si VP candidate Bello, he was he wanted to reform our market oriented masyado and pro employers, pro-capitalist na economic system. So gusto niya, both of them would like to install a labor-friendly na economic
Labor
system.
first policy. Opo. So that brings us to Calyodi. Ang gusto nga niya, labor first policy. Ano po? To which nagkaroon po ng rebuttal dito between Calyodi and Dr. Montemayor. Let's talk about first minimum wage. We asked that question to Calyodi tsaka kay Senator Pacquiao as well. Tinanong namin, doon sa present minimum wage, gaano ba dapat ang minimum wage dito sa NCR? Ang sagot po ni Calyodi, 750 pesos. Pero sabi niya, dapat doble pa nun. And si Senator Pacquiao came up with a number for a monthly sweldo. Pero at some point, halos ganun din po tumatak yung presyo. My question is this. It sounds good, Professor Jean, Professor Dennis, na itaas ang minimum wage dahil yan po ang hinihingi ng ating mga manggagawa. But is it really doable? Professor Jean, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm sure economists would, really not say yes or would really not approve to these unrealistic minimum wage promises of these candidates. Of course, they're noble, they're great, but this has to be studied further because this might also result in employers not hiring more workers. So this might also backfire against laborers, no? And we know that with more than 3 million unemployed currently, we know that we need jobs, no? I guess what we need are actually decent jobs, no? Jobs that would have social security benefits, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people may have jobs but they don't really enjoy social security benefits, and also people who are not really enjoying the minimum wage that we currently have, and a lot of employers are actually getting away with it. So I guess before we even think of having unrealistic minimum wage proposals, I think we should really be enforcing current laws that really put a lot of workers to the disadvantage.
And with that, it was Dr. Jose Montemayor Jr. who said, naiisip mo ba ang kalagayan ng mga empleyado doon sa mga sinabi ni Calyodi na 750 pesos, ng mga employer? Naiisip mo ba ang kalagayan ng mga employer, yung pong tanong niya kay Calyodi? Kasi 750 pesos, according to, sinabi na nga ni Professor Jean, no, it's unrealistic and that might cost something. Baka po, mas konti ang mga i-employ dahil nga tataas ang sweldo. Professor Dennis, nasagot ho ba ito ni Calyodi? Naisip ho ba niya ang mga employers?
Well, ang sabi niya dun sa kanyang rebuttal, dun sa kanyang reply sa rebuttal ni Dr. Montemayor is that, naiisip niya. Kaya nga lang kinakailangan naman bigyan ng prioridad sa panahon ngayon ng mga manggagawa. This is actually an interesting exchange between the two kasi both of them took a different side. Okay, had a different perspective about this matter. Si Dr. Montemayor, tinanong niya, pinakita niya yung nararamdaman ng mga employers. On the other hand, si Calyodi naman, yung mga workers. Interesting to kasi we are in the pandemic and both sides are experiencing, mga employers at saka empleyado. Both of them are suffering from the adverse economic impact of the pandemic. So, yes, I agree with the with the opinion of Professor G na it is untimely yung ganung klaseng proposal. Dahil nga pareho nagsasuffer, both sides ay nagsasuffer. And they should understand, pareho sila na dapat intindihin yung kalagayan ng bawat isa. Kung sakaling taasan man yung susundin yung 750 pesos na minimum daily wage, baka nga naman maraming magsara mga negosyo o kung hindi man, tumaas lalo yung presyo ng mga produkto. So at the end of the day, ang magsasuffer dito yung publiko.
Yung mga empleyado. There's also a question on Ukraine and Russia. There were two, I would say, kind of opposing views on this because sinabi po ni Defense Secretary Delphine Lorenzana na we'll take a neutral stand. Now, I think Professor Jean, you mentioned this a while ago, if I'm not mistaken. I just want to bring back what Senator Ping Lacson said about this and Mayor Isko Moreno. Sabi po ni Senator Ping, Article 1 ng UN Charter, signatory tayo dyan. Pag may aggressor, dapat may pakialam tayo. Di masama kung makisama tayo sa mga peace-loving nations para maging bahagi ang boses natin ng pagkondena kasi aggression talaga, invasion. Let me move to Manila Mayor Isko Moreno. Ano naman ang kinalaman ni Juan de la Cruz, ni Pedro, sa kasalukuyang hirap na kinakaharap ng mga tao dyan? I think before going to other things, we should attend at bigyan muna natin ng panahon kung papaano natin itatawid yung mga kababayan natin sa pandemyang ito. While it is true, at the same time, we recognize treaties and agreements, and I respect that. In fact, tama po si Sen Lacson, but first things first. Filipino first. Professor Dennis, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, valid naman yung point na before we think about the in problems happening in other parts of the world, isipin muna natin yung mga local problems natin. Pero it's not entirely true yung claim na wala namang impact. Kung ano man nangyayari sa ibang bansa ay wala namang impact, direct impact sa ating mga kababayan dito. Ang isang very clear na example niya na kung saan may impact yung nangyayari sa ibang bansa, since we are living in a globalized world, yung pagtaas ng presyo ng ng oil, ng fuel. So bukod pa doon, mayroon tayong mga OFWs. Medyo marami-rami rin yun na naiipit doon sa conflict sa Ukraine. So all these examples only prove that whatever's happening outside the Philippines has an impact in the local community. So, ang tinatanong lang naman doon is temporarily, pwede bang maging neutral muna tayo?
Sa ngayon,
sa tingin ko, dapat since ang konteksto dito, yung binanggit ni Senator Lacson na mayroong aggressor and being a member of the international community, I don't think na magkakaroon naman ng adverse impact sa bansa natin kung sakaling ipapahayag natin yung ating saloobin tungkol sa issue na yan.
Professor Jean, kayo po.
Yeah, I thought Ping Lacson's response, invoking the UN Charter was really very good, and it shows his grasp of this issue. I think Isko Moreno's response was coming from the fact that he was worried about migrant workers caught in Ukraine. But you can also argue that there are more than, I think, 10,000 Filipino migrant workers in Russia too. No? So this is something that really we have to contend with, every time there is a conflict. But for me, Ping Lacson's response was really great in the sense that he is invoking the UN Charter, and also the fact that the Philippines is a signatory to all international human rights instruments, and so it is incumbent upon us to really respect the rule of law in these times.
And I also want to talk about the vice presidential debate, but I have one last question with regards to the presidential debate. Yun pong aming, second to the last question. Tinanong po namin, kailan mararamdaman ng Pilipino ang impact ng inyong pamumuno or your leadership? And then we went into context that, if we remember, si President Rodrigo Duterte said 3 to 6 months, crime, corruption, etc. Kayo po, tinanong namin. While some were saying that they don't believe in timelines really, meron namang iba that gave specific, let's say, si Senator Pacquiao, in 100 days, ito po yung papagawa niya. Sino po sa inyo, sa kanila rather, ang nagustuhan yung sagot doon sa kailan mararamdaman ang impact ng inyong pamumuno? Professor Jean, go ahead.
Well, I guess most of them hesitated to really give a specific response, maybe probably because they were traumatized by President Duterte's, famous in 3 months to 6 months response 6 years ago, no? But I guess I think Lacson's response was very good in the sense that he's realistic enough, and I think it also reflects his stance as a politician who's been there and done that, no?
Sabi nga nila, di ba, ipagsama mo yung kanilang karanasan ni Senate President Tito Soto. Professor Dennis, what about you? Sino po sa kanila ang tumatak sa inyo when came to kailan mararamdaman ang impact ng kanilang pamumuno sakaling sila maging Pangulo?
Ang hinihintay ko po nakasagutan nila ay yung sanang may time frame. If not yung 100 days, yung 3 months to 6 months sana. I was hoping that they would come up with a bold statement na kaya kong solusyonan ng ganitong problema within a very short period of time. But I understand nga, and I agree with Professor Jean na what they had in mind when they were probably giving their answer was that yung incumbent president natin, sinabi na yon, and he failed in keeping his promise. Ang in-expect ko kasi, since we are in desperate times, we are in a difficult situation, I was expecting na may magbibigay ng time frame. Sasabihin niya na kaya ko itong gawin. Kahit yung mga yung mga tinatawag na mga madadaling solusyonan na problema. Although wala naman talaga madaling solusyonan na problema, pero somehow kasi gusto natin makita sa kanilang sense of urgency to solve the pressing problems. And to think na meron lang naman silang 6 years and they're not allowed to re-elect. So talagang napaka-importante, times of the essence. Kaya I was expecting someone or from among these presidential candidates to mention na kaya niyang gawin ito within a short period of time.
Okay. Also very quickly, I wanted to bring in Mr. Faisal Mangundato. Nung tinanong po natin yung kayo ba in favor of religious groups endorsing candidates, I remember that he said in so many words, lahat naman kami gusto yun, di ba? Parang hindi ko alam kung sinabi niya yung salitang plastic ba, parang wag na, let's be real, parang ganun po yung kanyang thought process. What were your thoughts on that?
Nababanggit yung mga
Professor Jean,
I think that was his best moment in that debate, no?
itong pandemya. Kapag tayo ay
Go ahead, Professor Jean. Sabi niyo po that was his best moment.
tagalikha, talagang tuloy-tuloy
Okay. Professor Dennis, go ahead.
na mamalagi sa
Well, I agree with Professor Jean kasi very realistic yung sagot ni Mr. Mangundato na kumagaman, let's not be hypocrites here. Lahat naman, even though some of us here would say na ayaw natin ma-involve yung mga religious organizations because of the separation of church and state, talaga naman ang pinupurso natin yung support at saka endorsement ng mga religious groups.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Yun ang pinaka-honest na sagot itong buong debate na to.
We'll be taking, okay, we don't need to go on a gap. Let's go to the vice presidential debate. Okay. Your thoughts, alam naman natin how that turned out. Ano po? But who performed the best? Para po sa inyo, Professor Jean, sa mga vice presidential candidates.
Kiko Pangilinan, of course, yeah. Because Senator Kiko has also been in politics for, I guess, more than 20 years. And he stood out as very statesmanlike and very well composed, but with very substantive answers. I think he is ready to be vice president.
Professor Dennis, what about you? Sino po sa kanila?
Well, I have to say that it's Professor Walden Bello. Kasi talaga namang pinakita niya sa atin kung ano ba talaga ang mayroon sa isang debate. He was not afraid to tell his thoughts regarding the performance of the other candidates, of his fellow candidates. In fact, umpisa pa lang sinabi niya na nasaan ba si Sara Duterte. So siguro the reason why he was looking for her was because marami siyang gustong sabihin kasing interesting rin na sinabi niya with the other vice presidential candidates. So yung role na ginampanan niya was what everyone was expecting sa isang, whether ito ay vice presidential debate or presidential debate.
All right.
And it would be hard to say na nag-grandstanding lang naman siya. Hindi, kasi meron din naman siyang clear program, platform of government, and principles that he adheres to. So, yeah, I think he would did well.
Okay. Professors Jean Franco and Dennis Coronacion, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Pinky.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.